Shalom. I want to give all honor, glory, and praise to YAHAWAH WA YAHAWAHSHI. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone G Master real well. Shalom to the 144,000 and the rest of the elect. And to all the Akim and Akwaf tuning in, may the Lord bestow the spirit of mercy and faith upon you. Bestow mercy and faith upon you as we enter into the last days of this captivity. This is the brother Halayim from the Great Millstone branch of Chicago coming at you with another lesson. And this lesson is going to be entitled, We Are Not Yet Saved. In this current position, in Babylon the Great, although you have a few, token jakes here and there, that have a good financial situation, a good way of life. They may not live in the ghettos and the slums, live in a bad part of the neighborhood, because the scripture said, what curse shalt thou be in the city? So, although we are under the curses, some jakes have it better than others. But regardless of what status you have that you have attained in Babylon the Great, we all have to acknowledge the fact that we are still in captivity. And there's a lot of Israelite camps, that are trying to say otherwise. And a reason that these camps say that they're not in captivity is because they more than likely live very, very comfortably. They have something crazy to hop in. They got a nice whip, a nice crib in the upper middle class neighborhood, and they feel as though, we're no longer under the curses and that we're already in the new covenant. But that can be no further from the truth, man. So I want to start this off with the book of Jeremiah, chapter 8 and verse 20. Matter of fact, I start at verse 19. It says, Behold, the voice of the cry of the daughter of my people, because of them that dwell in a far country, is not the Lord in Zion? Is not her king in her? Why have they provoked me to anger with the graven images and strange vanities? Verse 20, the harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we are not saved. And that scripture still applies to current day. In this position that we're in Babylon the Great, we're still being ruled over by our enemies, man. With all of these legislative policies that Esau Edom was pushing forth, Donald Trump in particular, it only takes, one more executive order for us to all be homeless, man. So we're all collectively as a nation, all over the world in the places that we've been scattered. We are all still being ruled over by our enemies, man. But we have to wait for YAHAWAH to vindicate us, man. Let's go to the book of Baruch, chapter 3 and verse 8. It says, Behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us, for a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments, according to the iniquities of our fathers, was departed from the Lord our power. So in all the places where we've been scattered, mainly here in Babylon the Great in America, in the States, we are in our captivity, man. We're subject to payments. You have to deal, jakes that have a home have to deal with a mortgage. You have to deal with a car note, paying off the house. And the majority of our people, they're going to have to pay these things off until they die. And it's all set up like that by design, man. For you to constantly be a debt slave, a wage slave to Esau Edom's oppressive system. So therefore, we're not free. It doesn't matter how much money you have on this side, because even if you have a better way of life than the majority of Jake, you're still subject to paying Esau, man. Every grocery store you go to, that's one of the curses right there. Matter of fact, let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, Let's see. This is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 in verse. Oh no, this is the wrong one. Salakia. Yeah, this is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28. And I'll start at verse 23. Salakia 43. It says, the stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. So these all go back to the curses, that these heathen nations that are enemies would end up having a higher position of power, in the economy and in society than us. And it said what? He will be the lender and we will be the borrower. And what do the scriptures say in this is the book of Proverbs 22:7. It says, the rich ruleth over the poor, the borrower is a servant to the lender. And going back to the curses in the current estate that we are in Babylon the Great, the majority of Jake is the borrower, and our enemies, mainly Esau, Edom, at the pinnacle, our arch rival, so to speak, he is the lender, man. He's the one that lends to us. And he's currently ruling over us right now. Job 9:24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. But fortunately, we're coming into an age where Esau's world is coming to an end. Let's go to the book of Micah, chapter 2. Micah chapter 2 and verse 10, it says, arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. Because it is polluted, it shall destroy you even with the sword of destruction. And when it says arise ye and depart, it's not physically telling you to, go south of the border and, go across the world and get out of Babylon the Great. No, it's talking spiritually. This is not our rest. This is the place of our captivity. Going back to Baruch, it said what? We have been subject to payments according to what? The iniquities of our fathers, man. So we are subjected to being borrowers to these heathen, man, and having to, try to live in their society. That the Lord is ultimately giving them the power to create, man. So I'm going to end this off with the book of Isaiah, because, hey, we're coming into the time frame where Esau's world is coming to an end, man. And eventually we will be loosed, from this yoke that's on our necks will eventually be loosed by YAHAWAH. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, and I'll start at verse 1. It says, for the Lord will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. They shall take them captives whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. So eventually, hey, the Lord is going to have mercy on us, man, and allow us to rule. Verse 3 is the main point. It says, and it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve, man. So that's going to be the day where we are free from this bondage, where we are free from being a borrower, to the lender, and being under the heathen. So I hope this lesson was edifying, and I want to give all honor, all glory, and all praises to Yahawah by Hashem Yahawashi by Hashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone GMS, Ruel Kwam Mesharala, Wa Abad Babal.